There is a moment in every life when something inside you quietly closes a door. No sound, no applause, just stillness. It's the moment you stop performing for the world and start performing for yourself. For years, maybe decades, you've been waiting for someone to notice your effort, to say, I'm proud of you, to validate your pain, to tell you that what you're doing matters. But one day it hits you, no one is coming. And strangely, that realization doesn't destroy you. It rebuilds you, because the day you stop expecting rescue, you start becoming unstoppable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one."
No one is coming.
That's the moment he was talking about, when thought turns to action, when waiting turns to movement, when the world stops being your audience and you become your own commander. Part 1, the quiet door. The moment you stop performing. Imagine this. You're lying in bed. The room is dark and your phone glows with the endless scroll of other people's lives. You see success, love, attention, everything that seems just out of reach. And deep down, a quiet voice whispers, "Why not me?" That whisper grows louder until it becomes a silent scream. But one morning, something changes. You wake up and realize the world isn't ignoring you. It's just busy surviving itself. 95% of people spend more time reacting than creating. That means if you're waiting to be noticed, you're competing with the noise of billions of distracted minds. The Stoics knew this truth 2,000 years ago. The crowd's attention is never the path to peace. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That's your first test to live so clearly and so intentionally that you no longer need to explain. The silence after disappointment can feel unbearable. You send a message, no reply. You work hard, no recognition. You pour your soul into a project, no applause. But that silence isn't punishment. It's a mirror. It reflects how much of your worth was built on being seen. When you remove the audience, who are you performing for? When the world stops clapping, will you stop moving? Marcus reminded himself. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. The silence that once broke you can become the silence that builds you if you listen differently. In that quiet, a new voice begins to form, not the loud voice of ego, but the calm whisper of purpose. That's your soul finally getting a chance to speak after years of interruption. Expectations. They're the invisible chains that keep most people suffering. Psychologists say unmet expectations are the #1 cause of chronic frustration. We expect others to understand. We expect success to be fair. But Stoicism teaches a better way, premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Before every day began, Marcus Aurelius imagined every possible challenge that might come. Not to make himself cold, but calm. He would think, today I may be ignored, I may be misunderstood, I may be overlooked, but I will not be broken. Modern science now calls this emotional immunity. Studies show it can lower stress by 30%. The Stoics practiced neuroscience long before the term existed, because once you stop expecting life to be fair, life finally becomes manageable. Once you stop expecting others to understand, you free them and yourself from disappointment. There's a strange paradox about power. It doesn't arrive when people admire you. It arrives when their opinions stop controlling you. Epictetus was once a slave. He had no wealth, no freedom, no recognition. Yet he said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Freedom to the Stoics isn't about circumstance. It's about sovereignty, the ability to rule your own mind. Every time you resist the urge to explain yourself, you build sovereignty. Every time you stay composed while being ignored, you build strength. Every time you show up when no one's watching, you become the rarest kind of person, reliable to yourself. So here's a simple challenge for you. For 1 week, do something meaningful every day without telling anyone. Write, train, read, create. But don't post it. Don't announce it. Don't seek feedback. Just do it quietly. At the end of 7 days, notice how your energy shifts. When the audience disappears, truth appears. Your focus sharpens. Your actions deepen. You begin to feel what Seneca meant when he said, "He who is brave is free." Because freedom isn't escaping people, it's escaping the need for their approval. There's a story about Marcus Aurelius that captures this perfectly. Each morning before sunrise, he would wake reluctantly, dreading the cold and the duty ahead. But he would whisper to himself, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being." He didn't wait to feel inspired. He acted from principle, not mood. Because he knew that greatness is quiet, it wakes before applause, and it works while the world sleeps. When you wake early to build your dream, when you choose calm over chaos, when you keep going without witnesses, you are practicing Stoicism. You are the emperor of your inner world. And here's the truth. The moment you stop performing for the world isn't the end of ambition, it's the beginning of mastery. You're no longer chasing recognition, you're chasing refinement. You're not trying to be seen, you're trying to be grounded. That's the real Stoic transformation, not the loud victory, but the quiet evolution. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Every rejection, every silence, every ignored message, that's the way. So close that quiet door, not with bitterness, but with strength. Walk into the silence as if it were a temple, because once you do, everything changes. And when it does, you'll understand why the Stoics didn't pray for easier lives. They prayed for stronger minds. Because once you stop waiting for the world to care, you become the kind of person the world can ignore. This is where it begins, the shift from noise to clarity, from performance to purpose. In the next part, we'll go even deeper into the illusion that traps so many of us, the myth of being seen. Why seeking understanding often leads to misunderstanding, and how the Stoics turned invisibility into their greatest strength. You're not invisible, you're just becoming untouchable. Stay with me. Part, the myth of being seen. There's a strange belief that quietly rules most lives. If people understand me, it'll finally feel real. It begins early, maybe as a child when you cried and waited for comfort, or as a teenager when you tried to explain who you were to people who only saw what they wanted to see. You believed that if you just explained, better performed harder, spoke louder, you'd finally be seen. But here's the truth, no one likes to admit the world doesn't see you. It sees the reflection of its own noise bouncing off your surface. That realization hurts at first, it feels like exile. But in Stoicism, exile is never a punishment. It's purification. It's the moment you stop mistaking visibility for validation. Marcus Aurelius faced this illusion every day. Imagine being emperor of Rome. Millions knew his name, yet only a handful knew his soul. He wrote in Meditations, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." He was the most seen man in the world, and yet he understood that being seen and being known are not the same thing. We live in the loudest era in human history. Studies show the average person scrolls through 6,000 pieces of content every day. That's 6,000 chances to compare yourself to illusions. 6,000 reminders that you are invisible in a world addicted to attention. But the Stoics would ask, invisible to whom? If you can see yourself clearly, what does it matter who else does? The need to be seen comes from confusion between witness and worth. You think if others don't notice, it doesn't count. But the universe doesn't reward applause, it rewards alignment. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because he knew that public misunderstanding is the tax you pay for private clarity. There's a psychological phenomenon called the spotlight effect. It's the belief that people are paying more attention to you than they actually are. In experiments, participants thought 50% of people noticed their mistakes when in reality, only 10% did. That means 90% of the time, no one's watching, no one's judging, no one's thinking about you at all. And that should set you free. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. He wasn't being morbid. He was being precise. Once you understand how temporary all attention is, you stop chasing it. You stop performing for spectators who will forget your name by tomorrow. Let's make it real. You post something from your heart's silence. You speak truth in a meeting, blank faces. You try to live with integrity. People misunderstand, gossip, twist. And yet you continue. That's the Stoic path. To act rightly, not loudly. To choose meaning over marketing. Seneca wrote, he who seeks wisdom is the wisest of men. He who thinks he has found it is the most foolish. In other words, never chase being seen as wise. Just seek to live wisely. Because here's what happens when you finally stop chasing understanding, you start to understand yourself. When the crowd disappears, your own reflection appears. You notice what truly motivates you. You realize how much of your life was spent proving instead of living. It's not that you stop caring, it's that your care matures. You care less about being known and more about being whole. And then something paradoxical happens. People start to notice, not because you demanded attention, but because you stopped needing it. True presence doesn't shout, it radiates. It's the quiet confidence of someone who no longer bargains for visibility. Think about a mountain. It doesn't need to advertise its height. It just stands and the world adjusts its gaze. The same principle applies to your life. You don't need to be louder, you need to be stiller. Because stillness creates gravity. In 2021, neuroscientists found that people are more drawn to calm voices and slower speech than high-energy performances. Why? Because calm equals credibility. The Stoics knew this instinctively. The calm man commands the room not through volume, but through grounded energy. Marcus wrote, "Be like the rock against which the waves crash." The rock doesn't fight the water, it simply remains. Over time, even the ocean respects it. So here's your Stoic exercise for this part. For 7 days when you feel misunderstood or unseen, don't correct people. Don't explain, just observe. See how much energy you conserve. Write down what you could do with that energy instead. Create something, learn something, strengthen something, because your worth was never waiting in someone else's eyes. It was waiting in your discipline. Every minute spent proving yourself is a minute stolen from improving yourself. Remember, the Stoics didn't chase fame. They built foundations. And 2,000 years later, we still speak their names. That's the irony. The ones who didn't care to be seen are the ones who became unforgettable. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus. They weren't influencers, they were architects of inner peace. And you're next in that line if you're brave enough to stop performing and start building. So when the world doesn't see you, whisper to yourself, "Good, am not performing anymore." This is your invitation to disappear from their expectations and reappear in your own reality. The myth of being seen ends here, because once you accept that no one owes you understanding, you become unstoppable. You no longer react to misunderstanding, you use it as material. You no longer beg to be included, you create your own table. Seneca said, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Apply that to your desire for recognition. Delay it. Let your work mature in silence. When it's ready, it won't need explanation, it will speak for itself. And when people finally notice, you won't even crave it anymore, because you'll have something better: clarity. The Stoic path is not about being untouched by life, it's about being unowned by it. So stand still. Let the world misinterpret your silence. It's not emptiness, it's concentration. Because when you accept that no one truly sees you, you begin to see everything clearly. And that clarity is what separates the distracted from the disciplined, the seen from the remembered, and the loud from the legendary. This is how Stoics handled misunderstanding, not with arguments, but with action. Not by explaining themselves, but by embodying truth until the world caught up. And it always does. When you're no longer obsessed with being understood, you begin to understand. That's when everything changes. In the next part, we go deeper into the transformation itself, how acceptance becomes authority, how loneliness becomes leadership, and how to turn isolation into your strongest asset. Because what the world calls being unseen, the Stoic calls being free. Part 3, acceptance, authority. There's a moment somewhere between exhaustion and awakening when you stop asking why life is unfair and start asking, what can I build with it? That's the turning point. That's the birth of authority. Acceptance is not surrender, it's strategy. Because every second you fight reality, you lose strength. But every second you accept it, you gain control. Marcus Aurelius faced plagues, betrayal, and war. He didn't write, "Why me?" He wrote, "If the wind does not serve, take to the oars." That's Stoic authority, the art of rowing through chaos without waiting for calm. Modern psychology calls this radical acceptance, and data backs it up. In 2023, Harvard researchers found that people who practice acceptance reduce anxiety by 35% and make clearer long-term decisions. Why? Because energy once wasted, resisting becomes energy redirected toward rebuilding. Acceptance isn't passive, it's power redirected. It says, I can't change the storm, but I can steer my ship. Think about your own life. Maybe you've been overlooked at work, replaced by someone loud or ignored after giving your best. The first instinct is to protest, to demand recognition. But what if you didn't? What if instead of fighting for approval, you built systems no one else could see? That's how authority begins, invisibly. Marcus ruled an empire, yet wrote every night like a student. He accepted that the crowd's judgment was fleeting, but truth was permanent. He didn't need validation, he needed vision. That's the first form of power, internal governance. When you accept that no one owes you understanding, you take back the throne of your own mind. You stop being a servant to perception and become a sovereign of perspective. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." Every insult, every failure, every silence, that's material. He was born a slave, crippled, owned by another man, and still his mind remained free. This acceptance transformed into unbreakable authority. Most people think control means manipulating outcomes. Stoics knew better. Real control is mastering input. You can decide how people speak to you, but you can decide how you listen. You can dictate success, but you can define excellence. Authority is built in the narrow zone between reaction and response. The space of Stoics called prohairesis, the power of inner choice. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Your challenges aren't punishment, they're invitations. Each test is a request for leadership starting within. Picture two soldiers in a storm. One curses the rain, the other tightens his armor. When the clouds break, one is soaked, the other ready. That's the difference between resistance and acceptance. In corporate studies from MIT, leaders who respond to crisis with calm tone and deliberate language are judged 42% more trustworthy than those who react emotionally. Authority starts in language, the words you tell yourself first. If your internal dialogue is chaos, your external presence will echo it. But if your thoughts move with order, even your silence commands respect. So here's a Stoic exercise. When something frustrates you, an insult, a delay, a failure, pause for 3 seconds before responding. 3 seconds of sovereignty. In that pause, remind yourself this moment is not mine to control, but my mind is. That's how the emperor inside you wakes up. Marcus Aurelius didn't gain power because of his title. He kept power because of his temperance. When his generals argued, he listened. When his people rebelled, he forgave. That's not weakness, that's calibration. He understood that emotional economy is political economy. Waste energy on anger, and you bankrupt your clarity. Authority isn't built by domination, it's built by discipline. And discipline begins the second you accept responsibility for everything you feel. In a distracted world, composure is currency. While everyone else chases attention, you chase alignment. While others panic for control, you practice command. Acceptance transforms chaos into choreography. You start seeing patterns where others see punishment. That coworker who criticizes you, a mirror for your patience. That delay in your plan, a test of perseverance. That betrayal, a free education in discernment. Every inconvenience is information. Marcus wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The moment you truly accept that the world stops being your enemy, it becomes your engineer. Authority doesn't arrive overnight. It's built in daily rituals, waking early, speaking less, finishing what you start, apologizing quickly, reflecting nightly. These micro-disciplines are invisible crowns. They tell your mind, I am responsible. A 2022 Stanford study found that people who journal their setbacks as lessons show 60% greater resilience during later stress. The Stoics practiced this centuries ago through nightly reflection. Marcus would ask himself 3 questions before sleep. What did I do today? What could I have done better? What will I do tomorrow? That's acceptance in motion. A dialogue between who you were and who you're becoming. Authority also means emotional detachment, not indifference, but discernment. There's a rule of thumb called the Stoic 4Ds. Don't defend, don't deny, don't dwell, don't dramatize. When criticism comes, let it pass through these filters. Defending drains you. Denying blinds you. Dwelling anchors you. Dramatizing destroys you. Just note, adjust and advance. That's what Marcus did while Rome burned. He led not by shouting orders, but by embodying calm. Acceptance also transforms how you lead others. Because once you master your inner empire, people feel safer around you. They trust you. They mirror your steadiness. In teams, families, nations' authority spreads by emotional contagion. The Stoic who rules himself rules the atmosphere. Epictetus trained his students by silence. He would let them speak until they revealed their own confusion. Then he would say softly, "You are not disturbed by the world, but by your opinion of the world." That single insight has outlived empires. Here's a modern application. The next time someone disrespects you, instead of reacting, run this internal script. Do I want to teach them a lesson or demonstrate one? Authority demonstrates, because example is the only language everyone understands. And remember, not every battle deserves your sword. Some just need your stillness. In ancient Rome, generals carried an item called memento mori coin, or skull, reminding them of mortality. They accepted death not to feel fear, but to feel focus. Today you can practice the same by remembering impermanence. When you accept that every insult, failure, and misunderstanding will fade, you stop giving them permanent residence in your mind. Authority isn't about winning every argument. It's about choosing which ones matter. The strongest person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one whose peace can't be stolen. Marcus wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That's the constitution of Stoic power. It sounds simple, but living it makes you extraordinary. Because the world is full of performers, few are governors of themselves. Acceptance doesn't mean liking everything that happens. It means acknowledging that it has happened and asking, what now? That question is authority distilled. When you can say what now instead of why me, you've crossed the threshold from emotion to execution. So let's turn this into practice. Each morning before looking at your phone, write down one thing you can't control and one thing you can. Then spend your day mastering the second. Do this for 30 days. By the end, you'll notice a calm undercurrent replacing anxiety. That's your authority taking form. People will sense it before they understand it. They'll wonder why you don't react, why you stay grounded when everything burns. They'll call you distant, but what they really mean is disciplined. Because distance from chaos is clarity, and clarity is power. Remember, authority doesn't mean ruling others. It means ruling your reactions in front of others. It's walking through noise with inner silence intact. It's the calm gaze that says, I decide what moves me. That's acceptance evolved into authorship, writing your life instead of being written by it. Seneca said, he who has great power should use it lightly. The greatest leaders aren't heavy with control. They're light with confidence. They accept what is so fully that nothing unexpected can break them, only bend them toward wisdom. And when people ask how you stay so centered, smile. Don't explain, just embody. Because explanation seeks approval, embodiment creates gravity. So here's where we are. Part 1 taught you to stop performing. Part 2 freed you from needing to be seen. Now in Part 3, you've taken the throne. Acceptance has become authority. But the journey doesn't stop here. The Stoics didn't aim only for control, they aimed for creation. In the next part, the Stoic Forge build the tools, how to train your emotions like muscles, how to turn solitude into strength, how to craft the kind of discipline that outlives circumstance. Because once you've claimed authority over yourself, the next step is forging the self that the world can't shake. And that begins in the fire of practice. Stay with me. The forge is waiting. Part 4, the Stoic Forge. There's a saying among blacksmiths, steel is born soft. It becomes strong only after the fire. So it is with the mind. You are not supposed to begin unbreakable. You are supposed to be forged. Every hardship, every disappointment, every sleepless night at the edge of collapse, they're not punishments. They're heat. And what you do with that heat decides who you become. Marcus Aurelius called it the inner citadel. A fortress built not from stone, but from discipline. You can't buy it, inherit it, or fake it. You have to forge it blow by blow in the fire of your own daily struggles. Most people run from the fire. The Stoic walks into it because he knows what burns you now can build you later. That's not a metaphor, it's biology. In 2022, Stanford researchers found that controlled stress, when approached deliberately, actually strengthens neural pathways associated with resilience. Your brain literally rewires itself to recover faster. Pain becomes preparation. That's the essence of the Stoic Forge, deliberate adversity. The modern world avoids discomfort like it's disease. The Stoic uses it like it's medicine. Seneca said, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. He was right. Every time you choose effort over ease, you add another layer to your armor. Every time you say no to comfort, you sharpen your edge. Let's test that idea with something simple. Try taking a cold shower tomorrow. It sounds trivial, but what you'll feel in that first icy second is pure instinct screaming, stop, and when you ignore it, when you breathe through it, you'll realize the instinct isn't the enemy, the surrender is. That moment teaches your nervous system obedience to your will. It's not about cold water, it's about warm control. The Stoics didn't chase motivation, they built momentum. They believed progress wasn't an emotion, it was a rhythm. You show up at the same hour, you write, you train, you think, you review, regardless of mood. That's how the forge works. Because repetition turns chaos into craft. Marcus Aurelius wasn't born disciplined, he practiced discipline. He journaled every night during wars, wrote philosophy in tents surrounded by death. He didn't have time for luxury, he created time for reflection. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That wasn't poetic comfort, was tactical strategy. He was reminding himself no one can invade a mind that's trained daily to defend itself. Modern science agrees. Habit repetition for 66 days rewires the basal ganglia, the part of the brain that automates behavior. Discipline literally becomes muscle memory. What begins as resistance becomes reflex. That's how Stoics forged freedom, not through chance, but through choice, repeated until it became character. Here's something powerful to try. Every morning before you touch your phone, ask 3 questions. 1, what emotion controls me most today? 2, what would the Stoics do with it? 3, what's one small act of discipline I can finish before sunrise? Those 3 questions answered honestly will forge more power than 1,000 inspirational quotes. Because philosophy isn't about words, it's about weight. The weight of waking early when you don't want to. The weight of silence when anger rises. The weight of kindness when cruelty feels easier. That's the forge of the place where comfort dies and character lives. But make no mistake, the forge is lonely. You'll lose people who don't understand why you've changed. You'll miss old versions of yourself that prefer distraction to development. You'll question if it's worth it. And every Stoic from Epictetus to Marcus would tell you the same thing it always is. Because solitude is the anvil where strength is hammered. Epictetus spent years exiled from Rome, teaching in a small rented hall. He had nothing but words and will. Yet his students became governors, philosophers, teachers of emperors. How? Because he made them uncomfortable. He said no great thing is created suddenly. He taught that time plus tension equals transformation. That's neuroscience again. The human brain grows in response to stress plus rest. The problem is most people live in stress plus escape. They never rest, they run. The Stoic doesn't run, he resets. And when he returns, his focus is sharper. He's not just surviving the fire, he's shaping the blade. Now let's talk about something most people misunderstand. Discipline isn't restriction, it's liberation. Think of a river. Without banks, it's just a flood spreading everywhere, achieving nothing. With boundaries, it gains force, it carves canyons. Your mind works the same way. Without structure, your potential leaks into distraction. With structure, it becomes unstoppable. Seneca wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." That's modern multitasking summarized 2,000 years ago. Every time you chase 10 things at once, you forge nothing. Focus is the heat. Repetition is the hammer. Reflection is the cooling water. That's the holy trinity of mastery. Focus, repeat, reflect. Marcus Aurelius would write the same line over and over. Do only what is essential. He was reminding himself attention is a weaponous, it like one. And here's a truth few people realize: discipline compounds like interest. Do one hard thing each day, and by the end of a year, you're not 365 days better, you're exponentially better. Neuroscientists call it adaptive resilience. It's not linear growth, it's geometric. Because each act of self-control strengthens every other. If you skip one distraction a day, you reclaim about 45 minutes. That's 270 hours a year. That's 11 full days, nearly 2 extra weeks of life simply by saying no once a day. That's the math of mastery. Now let's forge emotion itself. The Stoic doesn't suppress feeling, he refines it. Anger becomes fuel, fear becomes focus, pain becomes purpose. He doesn't deny emotion, he directs it. Modern Stoic scholars call this emotional transmutation, turning raw impulses into refined energy. Epictetus taught this by saying, "When something happens, you must say it was meant for me, and it will help me." He didn't mean destiny, he meant design. He was training perception to turn obstacles into oxygen. Try it yourself. When something frustrates you, traffic, rejection, failure, say out loud this is training. Because it is. Every difficulty is a personalized gym for your mind. The Stoic doesn't wish the weights were lighter, he becomes stronger for lifting them. In 2020, a study from Cambridge University found that people who interpret stress as challenge rather than threat experience 23% more focus and 31% less fatigue. The brain listens to narrative. Tell it that pain is preparation and it changes how your body responds. Your perception writes your physiology. That's why Marcus Aurelius, while dying of the plague, still wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." That's the forge turning ash into light. Now some will say, but isn't that exhausting? Always working, always enduring? No, because the Stoic doesn't fight forever. He alternates between building and being. Fire needs rest too. Even the blacksmith quenches the blade in water. Without stillness, steel cracks. Without rest, discipline decays. So the Stoic rests deliberately. He disconnects without escaping. He walks. He breathes. He reflects. He knows that strength isn't constant, it's maintained. That's your next exercise. Once a week, schedule a day without input. No news, no notifications, no comparison. Just solitude and simple work. Marcus would walk in silence among the soldiers' tents. Epictetus meditated on the sea. Seneca retreated to write letters to himself. Their silence wasn't absence, it was maintenance. Stillness is the blacksmith's breath between strikes. And here's the secret few understand. When you live this way, calmly forging yourself through deliberate challenge, you don't become colder, you become clearer. You start to radiate something the world can feel but not define. It's not charisma, it's composure. It's the still flame in the middle of the storm. That's why people follow Stoics. Not because they talk louder, but because they live deeper. Authority forged in fire doesn't shout, it glows. So as you walk through your own forge, remember this pattern challenge. Discipline, reflection, repeat. The more you cycle it, the stronger you become. And strength, when it's silent, becomes influence. Marcus didn't plan to become history's philosopher king. He just kept showing up to the forge. That's how legends are made, one deliberate day at a time. Because here's the truth, the Stoic forge isn't a place you visit. It's a life you live. It's in every cold morning, every calm response, every quiet act of discipline no one sees. Each moment adds another ring to your armor, polished by effort, cooled by patience. So when life heats up again, and it won't flinch, remember fire is only dangerous to the unshaped. To the forged, it's familiar. That's why Stoics walk through chaos like they've been there before. Because they have. And in time, when you've built your inner citadel strong enough, the noise fades. The storms calm, and you realize something profound. You no longer fear the fire. You are the fire. This is the Stoic forge, the place where pain becomes pattern, pattern becomes power, and power becomes peace. In the next part, we'll step beyond the forge into its consequence, the quiet empire. How the Stoics' inner strength reshapes relationships, commands respect without demand, and turns silence into gravity. Because once you are forged, the world begins to orbit around your steadiness. Stay with me. The empire begins at dawn. Part 5, the quiet empire. Empires built on noise collapse. Empires built on silence endure. The world tells you power is loud megaphones, applause, spotlights. But the Stoics knew the opposite. Real power moves quietly. It doesn't need to be seen because it already is. When you walk into a room grounded, composed, clear, something happens. People adjust. They slow down. They sense gravity. That's the quiet empire, the invisible kingdom ruled not by domination, but by discipline. Marcus Aurelius ruled the largest empire on earth, yet he said, "To be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over, it stands firm and the raging sea falls still around it." He wasn't talking about Rome. He was describing the empire inside himself. Because an empire built on others' obedience will fall when they walk away. But an empire built on self-command stands even when the world turns against you. That's why Stoicism is not about retreat from life. It's about ruling it from within. Authority forged in fire, as we saw, becomes presence. And presence, true presence, creates influence without effort. You don't need to demand respect. You emanate it. Epictetus said, if you want to be invincible, don't fight for what's outside your control. Invincibility isn't about muscles or money, it's about mental economy. While others waste themselves chasing control, you conserve your energy for mastery. This calm control has real-world results. In 2021, Yale researchers found that leaders who exhibit emotional stability during crisis improve team performance by 32% and reduce turnover by 23%. Why? Because calm is contagious. Your energy becomes the room's climate. The Stoic doesn't impose peace, he radiates it. That's how Marcus ruled. When his armies panicked, he didn't shout orders. He breathed, thought, wrote, then acted. His generals said his composure was more powerful than any weapon, because chaos obeys those who don't join it. But what does that look like today? You don't need a crown to rule a kingdom. Your kingdom is your reactions, your home, your company, your children, your craft. Every decision you make creates ripples. Every emotion you manage builds structure. Every time you choose clarity over complaint, you're building your empire. Most people try to change the world by arguing with it. The Stoic changes the world by aligning with reason. That's the difference between noise and power. Seneca said, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Every wasted minute is a crumbling wall in your empire. Every moment of presence rebuilds it. Let's be clear, this kind of quiet authority doesn't mean passivity. It means precision. When you speak, it matters. When you act, it lands, because silence before speech gives your words weight. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to pause before answering any question, one breath, one thought, one judgment. That pause made his decisions legendary. It wasn't slowness, it was sovereignty. That's how the quiet empire grows. Not by taking land, but by taking moments that others waste on reaction. Imagine you're in a meeting. Tension rises. Voices clash. Instead of joining the noise, you breathe once before speaking. That breath changes the direction of the room. You didn't overpower anyone, you out-centered them. That's Stoic diplomacy. And it works everywhere in parenting, leadership, love, and loss. Because presence wins more wars than aggression ever will. Now let's talk about relationships. The quiet empire transforms them too. Because when you rule yourself, you stop needing to rule others. You listen more. You expect less. You forgive faster. You detach from manipulation because your peace is no longer negotiable. Epictetus said, when someone is properly grounded in life, they shouldn't have to look outside themselves for approval. That's the essence of unshakable love-giving, without grasping, caring, without clinging. When people can feel that you don't need them to complete you, they start to respect you more deeply. Not because you're distant, but because you're whole. In 2020, relationship psychologists at Berkeley found that individuals with high emotional self-regulation reported 43% higher long-term satisfaction in love and friendships. The conclusion was simple: calm people create safe environments. You don't just love better, you lead better. The Stoic doesn't need to control people, he inspires them, because his steadiness becomes their standard. That's how the quiet empire expands, not by conquest, but by example. But let's be honest, holding your peace in a noisy world feels unnatural at first. You'll be misunderstood. They'll say you've changed. They'll call you distant, detached, too serious. Marcus was called cold by his peers. Seneca was mocked for moderation. Epictetus was dismissed for poverty. And yet history remembers them. Not the loud, not the rich, not the reactive, but the ones who stayed composed when the crowd lost itself. That's your challenge too, to stay aligned when the world unravels. It's easy to be calm when life cooperates. But the Stoics' empire is tested when everything falls apart. The loss of a friend, the betrayal of trust, the collapse of plans. That's when the forge becomes the foundation. When what you built inside begins to protect you from what falls outside. Because calm isn't naturally, it's cultivated. And once you've cultivated it long enough, it becomes instinct. That's the quiet revolution of Stoicism, teaching your nervous system to obey your reason. Authority creates presence. Presence creates gravity. And gravity creates empire. But not all gravity is created equal. Some people pull others down. The Stoic pulls others inward toward awareness, toward balance, toward peace. Seneca said to govern oneself is the greatest empire. That empire begins when you stop chasing crowns and start polishing your compass. Your compass is your principles. Do not betray them for applause, do not sell them for comfort, because every compromise is a small rebellion against yourself. And empires are not lost overnight, they erode one compromise at a time. That's why Stoics valued self-discipline above all else. Marcus wrote, "Let your one delight and refreshment be to pass from one act of kindness to another." Power wasn't the goal, virtue was. He didn't measure success by followers but by integrity. And 2,000 years later, he still commands the respect of every philosopher, CEO, and soldier who studies him. That's the legacy of quiet power. Now let's apply this. How do you build your quiet empire today? Start with your morning. The first hour of the day decides the tone of your mind. No phone, no news, no noise. Just breathe, plan, and reflect. Marcus used to write his intentions at dawn. Today I will meet the ungrateful, the arrogant, the deceitful. Yet none of them can harm me because I will not let them. That's empire maintenance. Then during the day practice deliberate composure. When tension rises, pause. When insult hits, smile. When pressure grows, focus. You're not suppressing emotion, you're mastering timing. And before sleep, review. What ruled me today, impulse or intention? That's your evening Senate meeting. You're both the emperor and the advisor. A Stoic's empire isn't measured in wealth or followers. It's measured in self-respect. It's built on the rarest kind of currency, inner peace. Peace that doesn't collapse when criticized. Peace that doesn't need attention to feel alive. Peace that turns chaos into choreography. When you reach that level, you become what Jung called a magnet for authenticity. People feel safer in your presence because your calm confirms theirs is possible. That's the invisible empire, the world rearranging itself around your steadiness. And the irony, once you reach that point, you stop caring who notices. Because empire wasn't the goal, it was the side effect of becoming whole. Marcus Aurelius said, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." He meant that everything you seek, peace, respect, power, purpose is already buried inside you, waiting for discipline to unearth it. That's why the Stoic never fears isolation. He's never truly alone. He's always among his thoughts, his principles, his gods within. His empire doesn't need walls, it needs awareness. So now the pattern is clear. Silence is not emptiness, it's foundation. Solitude is not exile, it's training. Calm is not weakness, it's command. This is the architecture of the quiet empire. It doesn't broadcast, it emanates. It doesn't chase, it attracts. It doesn't argue, it demonstrates. You don't have to explain discipline, people feel it. You don't have to announce wisdom, it shows in your restraint. You don't have to demand respect, it forms naturally around your steadiness. That's the paradox of Stoic power. The less you try to appear powerful, the more powerful you become. And so as we approach the final part, remember this. The Stoic journey begins in chaos but ends in clarity. You started by learning that no one cares, and that freed you. You accepted it, turned it into authority, forged your discipline, and built your inner empire. Now there's one last transformation, turning all of it, pain, silence, strength into something that lasts beyond you. Because the greatest Stoics didn't just live well, they left wisdom behind. They built legacies that outlived death, and that's where we go next. The final chapter. The door opens is not about the end. It's about what happens when the Stoic steps beyond himself and gives his empire back to the world. Stay with me. The final door is opening. Part 6. The door opens. There's a moment in every transformation when you realize you were never meant to stay inside the fortress forever. The forge made you strong. The quiet empire made you calm. But strength and calm mean nothing if you keep them locked away. The Stoic's final lesson is this: freedom isn't something you keep. It's something you give. That's when the door opens. Marcus Aurelius knew this moment well. He spent years meditating on mortality, writing words he never meant to publish. Those pages were his private discipline, yet 2,000 years later they guide millions. He never tried to become a teacher. He simply lived with such honesty that the world couldn't ignore it. That's how true Stoics lead without trying. They live so clearly that others start to see themselves. This is the shift from power to purpose. When your calm becomes more than protection, it becomes light. The world around you doesn't just change how it sees you, it begins to change how it sees itself. That's what Marcus meant when he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." He wasn't giving advice. He was giving permission. Permission to stop overthinking, start embodying. The modern world is desperate for that kind of embodiment. Look around, chaos sells. Everyone's loud, everyone's right, everyone's angry. The internet rewards outrage more than truth. But when you walk into that noise with stillness, you become magnetic. People feel something ancient, something missing, because the Stoic presence reminds them of what peace feels like. And peace, my friend, is the rarest currency left on earth. Let's pause here. Think about the most centered person you've ever met. They didn't rush. They didn't explain. They didn't seek your validation. And yet you listened. That's not charisma. That's self-mastery expressed quietly. And it's built on everything you've learned through this journey: acceptance, control, discipline, calm reflection. The Stoic doesn't need to prove his worth because he knows his worth. That knowing radiates. That's what Marcus called living in agreement with nature. It means you stop fighting what's happening and start flowing with it. Not passively, intelligently. You stop wishing people were better and start showing them how. That's how the door opens, not with noise, but with example. There's a story I love. A young soldier once approached Epictetus and asked, "Master, how can I change the world?" Epictetus smiled and said, "By first learning to change your face." The soldier frowned. Epictetus explained, "When your face no longer reacts to every insult, when your expression reflects reason instead of rage, you've already changed the world around you." That's the Stoic paradox: control yourself, and everything shifts. In today's world, this lesson is more urgent than ever. Social media thrives on reaction. Politicians profit from division. Markets rise and fall on fear. But a Stoic doesn't rise or fall with the noise. He observes, learns, adjusts. He trades emotion for understanding, blame for strategy. He knows that to lead others, he must first lead himself. Harvard's 2023 behavioral study proves something the Stoics knew all along. Individuals who regularly practice self-distance reflection, thinking about problems as if advising a friend, make 43% better long-term decisions and experience 26% less emotional regret. That's modern data proving ancient wisdom. Detach, reflect, decide. That's the Stoic triad. And when you master that, you stop chasing influence because influence starts chasing you. So what happens next? You've built your forge. You've ruled your quiet empire. You've opened your door. Now you walk through it, not to escape your solitude, but to apply it, not to shout your lessons, but to live them. Because the world doesn't need more contentment, needs more conduct. It doesn't need more opinions, it needs more examples. And every time you embody calm under pressure, you become a living invitation for others to rise. Marcus once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." That's how legacy works. Your thoughts color your actions. Your actions color your days. Your days color the lives you touch. And one day someone will live differently because you once stayed calm when others couldn't. That's how the Stoic legacy spread, quietly, exponentially. Like candlelight passed from one flame to another. No noise, no ego, just illumination. But there's one last temptation: you must resist the illusion that wisdom means withdrawal. Some think Stoicism is about isolation, about sitting in silence while the world burns. But Marcus didn't meditate to avoid the world. He meditated so he could serve it without being consumed. Epictetus didn't teach detachment to escape humanity. He taught it to understand humanity without losing empathy. That's the mature Stoic's paradox: the calmer you become, the more you can handle. The more detached you are, the deeper you can connect. Because you're no longer connecting from needier, connecting from wholeness. So here's your mission now. You've built peace within yourself, share it. You've forged strength through pain, eat it. You've learned silence, let your presence speak. It could be as simple as listening without judgment, as bold as forgiving without condition, as practical as doing your work quietly, brilliantly every day without announcing it to the world. Because true Stoicism doesn't need marketing. It creates momentum. In the words of Seneca, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. That's how you become part of the lineage. Think of it like this. Your forge was your training. Your empire was your foundation. But this is your calling. To walk calmly through a burning world and remind others there's still such a thing as peace. To show that success without serenity is failure in disguise. To prove that stillness is not weakness, it's command. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. And presence, real, grounded, stoic presence, changes everything. Because people don't remember what you said. They remember how they felt around you. And calm, my friend, is unforgettable. Let's make it practical again. Here's your daily stoic ritual for this final phase 1. Morning realignment. Ask what would calm do today, not what fear wants, not what ego wants. What calm would do. Write it down. Live by it. 2. Midday reset. When stress builds, whisper, Marcus line. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Then breathe until that sentence feels real. 3. Night reflection. List 3 things you did with composure. Not achievements, moments of restraint, clarity, or kindness. That's the Stoic metric for success. Because consistency is the true crown of philosophy. And here's something profound to remember. You will fall. You will forget. You will break. Even Marcus did. He wrote, when you have done wrong, return quickly to yourself. Forgive. Reset. Continue. The Stoic journey doesn't end, it renews. Like dawn, it comes again every morning. Each sunrise is another chance to choose wisdom over reaction, discipline, over drift, purpose, over pleasure. That's what makes the Stoic immortal, not lifespan but legacy. We live in a time where anger is currency and distraction is culture. But you don't have to join it. You can be the exception, the calm in the storm, the one who doesn't chase noise but creates signal, the one who doesn't break under pressure but bends like steel. That's the Stoic advantage. That's the gift you've earned through this journey. And when you give it to others, when your steadiness helps someone else find theirs, you fulfilled the purpose of philosophy itself. Marcus never got to see how his words changed history. Seneca never saw how his letters reached beyond Rome. Epictetus never knew his lectures would inspire emperors. And you may never see the full effect of your composure either. But that's the beauty of the quiet empire. You don't need to. You just keep walking, keep working, keep being. Because peace once born never dies, it echoes. And one day when someone else faces chaos, they'll remember how calm you were. And that memory will become their starting point. That's how the door truly opens. So here we stand at the end of this journey and the beginning of another. You started seeking control. You found discipline. You built calm. You forged strength. You ruled silence. And now you've opened the door to service. You are no longer the student of Stoicism. You are its continuation. Every time you choose reason over rage, you keep philosophy alive. Every time you live with purpose in a world addicted to noise, you become part of its lineage. You are the modern Marcus, the quiet Seneca, the walking Epictetus of your generation. That's your empire now. And it begins not with fanfare, not with followers, but with one silent, powerful step forward. If this message reached you, don't let it fade. Live it, share it, because the world doesn't need another video, it needs another example. Like, comment, and subscribe, not just for more words, but to build a movement of calm minds in a chaotic age. Join the Stoic family. Become the difference. And remember, when you accept no one cares, everything changes. Because that's when you finally do it for the right reason, not for them, for you, and in doing so for everyone.